Okay, so we do have a quorum. So, and now that you're comfortably at home, are you able to take minutes?
Sure.
Thank you. So you gave, I took your paper to write a note, and now you get to take minutes as well. You get to lose more paper, or at least, you know, a
Yeah,
notepad or something like that.
sounds good.
Set up captions as requested. Okay, so a meeting is being recorded. It is on Zoom. It is only on Zoom as the building itself is locked. Notice was posted over on the town hall door. And so we'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. So no public for public engagement. We have the minutes from the March meeting. I will share those.
Dan, do we have a quorum with 4?
We do.
Okay.
4 is a quorum of 6. So these are the minutes as submitted by Catherine. Much thanks to her. It went over the various minutes. Those have all been submitted, by the way. Talked that there's no public engagement. Had brief discussion about general bylaws. And talked about things about rodenticide. I'll get back to that later. And then briefly talked about the other items. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
And I just want to make sure that everything's by roll call. Perfect. Okay, so motion has been made and seconded. Meeting location is there. All the required elements appear to be on the minutes themselves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. So motion
Yes.
made by Ann, second by Joe. Any comments? Seeing no comments, we'll do this by roll call. I'm going to stop sharing so we can have it in the order in which it appears on my screen. Ann.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
And I'm an affirmative, so unanimous, the minutes are approved. I will go ahead and put a footer on with the approval date on it and send them on their way. That brings us over to a bunch of general bylaws. So did have some discussion with Attorney Mullen about there were a variety of issues that we've taken up over the last few years that we've been meeting, and we now have 4 of those ready in warrant form. The expectation, I'll show these in a moment, is that we can discuss these and if we so wish, vote on them, and that will have them ready for the next town meeting, which will presumably be in the fall. So we'll have them done in advance. This would be most likely in addition to the zoning bylaw as well. So Catherine is joining us. Welcome, Catherine, at 7:07. Catherine, we just approved the minutes that you took at the last meeting. Much thanks. And Ann is taking that responsibility on for this meeting.
Thanks, Ann.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So just about to start the discussion about the general bylaws. Again, the purpose of this is so that we'll have the ability to, if we vote on these tonight, to then focus really on the zoning and any other bylaws as they come up. That's the purpose behind having this particular discussion, so that we can effectively dispense with the non-zoning bylaws and have those ready for presentation in November. I don't think that any of these 4 articles as we get started are going to be particularly controversial. There is some additional feedback from Attorney Mullen. I will bring that up in a moment here as well. So we have the benefit of his opinion, because he does have he does have some opinions on these. Okay, first we have chapter 147, which is on sidewalk cafes. And there were some his comments as it related to this was regarding the sidewalk cafes. He said that signage is his comment on signage is already discussed in the sidewalk cafe section, so he didn't want to make it too confusing, and he thinks it would confuse enforcement if he made both the police and DPW mutually have jurisdiction. The only thing where that is currently done and does seem to be working to some extent is with snow and ice, where DPW shares the jurisdiction for enforcement with police, because during snowstorms, DPW does go around and they usually do warnings more. So I don't know that they've issued any tickets, although they have the ability to. So that was his comment on this. And so the component here is to make it very clear as to where the compliance is. So for enforcement, compliance is that by a police department, and again, doing the same stepped range that is permitted and consistent with the other bylaws for $100, $200, $300 for each offense. And that way the timing of that starts with the first offense. So it's a 12-month rolling calendar. In addition, each day shall constitute a separate offense. So if someone has a sign that is not, or they have something that is not in compliance with sidewalk cafes and they remain out of compliance, it can be $300 a day very quickly. The idea being that it can be subject to non-criminal disposition. So for $100, the town probably won't go to force a collection, but if you get to $2,000, it probably will. It's just a matter of where that is. That becomes a matter for really the town administrator and the town council to decide how much pressure to put on someone who has been ticketed under this. So this is to go ahead and really add the enforcement clarity section as to who's responsible for enforcement of sidewalk cafes. Because right now it is unclear as to who enforces it. Do we have a motion to approve the article as presented?
So moved.
So Ann's made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Kevin seconds. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, the article before us is to approve, and this will refer this to the town council to be placed onto the warrants as sponsored by the Bylaw Review Committee for amending Chapter 147 of the general bylaws for sidewalk cafes, adding a section on enforcement. So we'll take a vote in the order in which you appear on my screen. Anne?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm in affirmative as well. So this will be referred off. We have our first warrant article of the fall done. Well done, everyone. Okay, second article. News racks. So for news racks, this is to really just update the language slightly. It's a very minor change. It deletes the current language or replaces it with a news rack may be deemed abandoned if nothing is found in it for more than 15 consecutive days. This way, if there aren't many news racks left in town, I think there's only 2 or 3, but if they are abandoned, which would not be all that surprising, this way it actually gives the town the legal right to remove it. So the current news racks, I believe there's still some outside of the post office, and I think I saw one down on Main Street, further down Main Street, but that one may have already been removed. I remember 1 year ago. So do we have a motion to approve the article for chapter 148?
So moved.
Second.
Kevin's made the article, and Ann has seconded the motion to approve our article for chapter 148. Any discussion? Please keep in mind this does apply whether it is real news, legitimate news, fake news, or illegitimate news. If it's a news rack, it can be removed if there's no news. There's always news, but whether it gets printed and put into a news rack can be subject to removal. So most of us get our news online. So a little bit of humor, but also very serious that if a news rack's abandoned, we don't want it cluttering up the public way either.
Dan,
So-
who does this fall under?
This would fall under the DPW
Okay,
because the news rack is on the public ways.
got it. Thank you.
I remember that discussion from 2023 when we had it. Sometimes the mind works. Great question. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is to approve and refer the Newsracks article for chapter 148 to the next town meeting. Anne,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm also in agreement, so this is unanimous. Moving right along. Next article that we have is Peace and Good Order. This is to vote and amend chapter 154.9. This is actually a minor update to marijuana. Some of the comments that we had related to spelling, the spelling was ultimately corrected. And this is actually a minor update as proposed by Town Council Mullen to correct the language. As he put it, this actually changes the citation from the general law rather than the session law, so that someone who's reading these bylaws will have the ability to read it more easily. I will note as we get into the discussion for this that at the upcoming town meeting on May 5th, there are 2 articles on the warrant related to marijuana use. One would effectively remove this in this particular bylaw in its entirety in its current form. And then there's a zoning article as well. The zoning article appears to have been withdrawn from the planning board. Has been removed from the planning board, or request to have it removed by the planning board from the public hearing when I was looking at the agenda earlier. So it looks like there may be an issue. Those may be recommended for indefinite postponement or something at the upcoming town meeting, but we will have to wait and see how that gets handled.
Now.
So with that, do
Dan,
we, yes,
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this already presented for town meeting, or can we make a tiny punctuation correction?
we can absolutely make as many corrections as we'd like.
So Steve Mayo he'll tease me on this, but I love the comma. So the Oxford comma, so I would put a comma after distribution. Sorry, it is my geeky English background.
Any objections to putting in the Oxford comma?
I'm so excited I got to amend an article with the Oxford comma.
And given that we have not actually had the motion yet, we can make changes informally. And then once a motion is made, you may notice I also added in the periods for MGL, which is another stylistic thing that it seems like mostly lawyers like to do. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I've seen it in most of the various articles. So to use appropriate humor for this, and Anne, you can tell all of your students about this. The answer to that is comma on.
Excellent. Very excited about that.
So it was comma off, now it's comma on. Okay, that's when someone wants to know if you should put an Oxford comma in, the answer is always comma on.
Always
Okay.
comma on. Yep.
Right. And depending upon how you say it, with New England accent, they will have no idea what you're saying. Okay, with that, with the minor typographical updates, do we have a motion to approve and refer the article for chapter 154-9 to the next town warrant.
So moved.
Anne makes the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Catherine seconds. So any discussion? Commas or no commas? Periods or no periods?
So this is an amendment to what the current bylaw is, right?
Correct.
Does this fall under what Attorney Bobrowski talked about, where typically for recreational, we don't have any bylaw technically because the date on the old one expired?
The date on the old prohibition expired, correct. This would allow for prohibition on public land. So
Okay,
this way and it actually also applies for, it would renew the prohibition for areas in which it is enforceable.
okay, gotcha.
And if the enforceability area changes, it would expand automatically. So it's a great question. I'm going to bring up the E code specifically for this to put it into context. So this is the current bylaw as it's framed. And what all that's really changing is the second sentence. So this says the marijuana establishments are forbidden, and it's changing the reference from chapter 369 of the Acts of 2012 to the actual law where it's referring to the licensing.
Gotcha.
So it'll be, unless this particular bylaw does get removed, which could happen at this town meeting. If that were to happen, I would recommend that we then come back and revisit this particular article and decide whether we want to, again, continue with it or if it's moved at that point. Great question. But the other prohibition that's in other parts of the bylaws of marijuana just generally being prohibited now only applies to public areas because it's unenforceable on private areas by those who are permissible to use it. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion before us is to approve the article with the correct commas and periods. And we'll take a vote in the order in which you appear. Anne,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. And as we go into this, for what it's worth, I'm not sure if the planning board is planning on going forward with the public hearing tomorrow, but as it does relate to this general topic, I would recommend that the planning board actually go through with the public hearing itself, just so that bar is taken, and whether it chooses to go forward with a recommendation for or against, that way it will be recorded at town meeting. So from a process perspective, I just want to make that part clear. And that brings us to the fourth article for this evening, scenic roadways. Which on the one hand seems kind of amusing, but we do actually have scenic roadways. And for this is just changing section C because, well, there are no commissioners in Middlesex County, and it just renumbers it. So many thanks to Anne for identifying that issue. And this is the actual direct outcome from that particular component. And I view this as actually very typical of what this body is supposed to do, just in terms of periodically going through the bylaws to find things that are truly out of date and need to be updated. So much thanks. With that, do we have a motion to refer the scenic roadways articles updating section 191-4 to the next town meeting?
So moved.
Anne makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Joe. So each person has seconded an article here. Excellent. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will be further removing the commissioners of Middlesex County that no longer exist anyways. Taking the motion before us is to move this particular article to the next town meeting. Anne,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote in the affirmative as well. And with that, that takes care of these 4 articles, and those are now ready for town meeting with the appropriate changes, commas, periods, and other items. I'm quite confident Tom will get a kick out of the Oxford comma when it comes back to him. I will make sure to point it out.
He will not be surprised.
Not at all. We've had many a discussion about Oxford commas at meetings over the years, and you are not the first to bring that up. I am personally a big fan of the Oxford comma as well. Okay. So those were the general bylaws. So general bylaws about town meeting, item number 5. This is chapter 36. We referred this discussion to me to have further discussions with Bill Carroll and Tom Mullen. I had a meeting with Bill Carroll before this meeting. He was unavailable due to the town treasurer debate that's going on as we speak. I look forward to catching that afterwards. It should be a spirited debate over who gets to collect the funds for the town itself. But the discussion that we had about the general bylaws is where should the town meeting have the ability to govern itself with respect to debate? And that's really what the issue comes down to. It's not whether someone can bring an article to town meeting. It's when an article is hurtful or nonsensical in its content. Well, not so much the article, but the presentation is hurtful or nonsensical in its content and known to be. Should the town meeting have the ability to say, we don't actually want to hear it, or the ability to cut off a presentation once it's begun? If a person starts getting into an area that's not, that is inappropriate, as determined by the meeting itself. So, and that's really where the discussion is. It's not about the right to petition the government. That right is very much a First Amendment right. It's not about the right of the government to say you can or cannot say something, but it is a matter of, does the legislature, in our case town meeting, have the ability, or should have the ability, to stop debate at any point, including during a presentation that may, to use an analogy, go off the rails, so to speak, where it becomes completely inappropriate and it can devolve. So that we've had several articles that have gone very close to that type of standard, and whether it would be appropriate for a discussion to be cut off, I would leave to the meeting itself by a large supermajority. My suggestion would be 3/4 of those present to make that decision at that time. It couldn't happen for most articles, but only for articles that are brought by an individual. So nothing that comes, but like a budget article, or comes through through a governance structure. So the idea is for the articles that are brought up and can be nonsensical in their nature, should the town meeting be forcibly a captive audience for up to 10 minutes based on whatever someone wants to say. And Bill's thought on this, and I'm just paraphrasing him, he is asked to come to a future meeting to discuss this in more depth. So I apologize in advance to him if I'm misconstruing it. But his feeling on it is that a person who comes before town meeting with a warrant article, who petitions it, should automatically have the right to do their 10 minutes on anything that's within the four corners or even associated with those four corners, no matter how vile, disgusting, and have that captive audience. And for the 10 minutes, he says that part of debate is the fundamental purpose of the town meeting, even if it's known to be, dare I say, inappropriate and unactionable by town meeting. So that's something that Robert's Rules has contemplated. Town meeting time currently does not allow, and previously we did not see realistic problems with it other than the last few years where we've seen governance structures start to be weaponized. So open to different thoughts and so forth. No action is being requested at this meeting. I would like to see that the town meeting has the ability through some sort of reserved means to stop harms if it deems that they are occurring. Because we have seen where that is the case. If someone says something completely inappropriate, they demand that someone be harmed, they demand that someone have bodily harm to them or some equivalent. Right now, there's no actual way to stop it just on the merits. The town moderator can't say, oh, that's outside of the bounds of decorum. That is not permissible. So this is a matter of, does town meeting, should it have the ability to cut someone off? And it is a legitimate question as to whether as a body it should. So open to each of your thoughts on the issue, but that's really where the discussion has gone so far. There isn't language to present at this time.
I don't know how well I can speak to this before hearing from Bill in detail, because I think, town moderator, I think Bill does have the ability to cut off a discussion. I would like to, and I think that's part of his purview, part of his responsibility. So I am curious to hear what he has to say. If he felt like he could stop something that was injurious or, offensive over the line. People will debate what's offensive to you is not offensive to me. But I think, Dan, I don't feel comfortable vetting it out huge right now, because I think Bill's going to have a lot to offer.
Okay, that's fair enough. Others' thoughts?
I think I would agree with Ann. I don't think we can go too far with the discussion until we're able to talk with him directly. But just so I understand, when you spoke with him earlier tonight, his initial thought was that anyone who brings a town warrant should get the 10 minutes, no matter, as long as they stay within that four corners.
As long as they stay close to the four corners. No matter what those corners are. That is correct. They get the 10 minutes unfettered.
And he defines the four corners, right? As town moderator.
To some degree, it's loose. It's very loose. So yeah, while he does retain the control of the meeting, the four corners are defined by the article, and he does retain some discretion as to what would be within or close to it. But the courts, from what I've seen, have been very much in favor of letting the moderator control things to an extent, but he cannot infringe upon a person's right to speak on his own. And so, and that's where I'm not looking to ask the moderator to take any of those roles on, because I would consider that as a government elected official, that is not something that he would universally have or should have, nor should he have the right to stifle free speech in that way. But I think that the body should have the right to govern itself. And that's really where it's a matter of what is the proper way for that to happen. And there isn't any sort of agreement on should the body have the right to do that? Are the tools available to it right now to do that? Because some of the tools built into Robert's rules are exempted out by town meeting time, which is how our rules are interpreted. So because this type of issue was not anticipated to come before legislatures, but unfortunately, as we've seen, has come before legislatures. And part of it is the decision as to what is injurious can be somewhat subjective to a person, a group, or otherwise. And I don't want to suggest that that is something that an individual who is an official should make as a unitary decision. I think that's something that a body can choose whether something is deemed enough to cut off the debate early. Just as we have the ability to call the question, should we have that ability during debate or otherwise to then interrupt and say, okay, we're calling the question, we've heard enough. And therein lies the question. I'm posing it, and that I expect we'll have this discussion either in August or September when we'll come back, because in the meantime, we will likely be working to try and get the zoning bylaws finished up and ready for town meeting, because we need to get those done realistically by September so that we can have them ready for public hearings with the planning board in October before a November town meeting. So we've got work to do back on those as well. So this issue will kind of get tabled for a while, but I did want to bring it up as to where things are, and that there's a lot of, I think, really good discussion as to what the tools should be for a meeting to police itself. And it's not an easy determination to make.
Do we know how Tom Mullen stands on this, town council?
Town council, he last weighed in on it to us at our December meeting, where it was similar. He thought that just calling the question on any article was sufficient. Sometimes the way that an article is written, it can be injurious in and of itself. And so the idea would be that depending upon what the issue is, there are different ways to dispose of an article. And at its core, should the governing body, the town meeting, have the ability to have that vote as to what it wants to deal with and how it wants to deal with it at any time or not? Does a person get a captive audience for a full 10 minutes? To be clear, there's no question that a person has the right to ask the question of the body. Whatever question it is that they put on the warrant, they can ask. The exact wording of that question does not have to be in the warrant article. The exact question, it just has to be related to it. So they could say and I'm going to use an intentionally ludicrous example. They could say as a warrant article, they want to rename the Lake Quannapawa. And then in the actual warrant article, they want to rename the article, the lake to, in this case, Lake Mayo. I'm thinking Lake Mayo. I'm trying to keep this a little bit less partisan and less directly related to other things. But not disagreeing, but say Lake Mayo in honor of the service that Mayos have done to our town. And I'm choosing something that on its one hand is kind of farcical, because I don't see it as something that the town meeting would necessarily want to handle. But if someone wants to bring that article up, they could. Someone could also bring up an article that a sitting person, and it could be, say, a town councilor, should be removed from the town meeting. And they could say hateful, spiteful things that are false and could be blatantly defamatory. And while there may be civil actions that can be taken after the fact, should the town meeting be subject to that? And this is not that far-fetched from things that have happened in other communities, where we have seen that we don't want particular elements. I take a look at nearby in Winchester, where they actually did have laws on the books that properties could not be sold to certain groups, certain ethnic groups. While those are no longer enforceable, they are a part of those restrictive covenants, are still a part of some deeds, some of the very, very old deeds. So that type of discussion can happen even today. And so the idea is, should the town meeting have the right of some sort? And I don't know, and I don't have a good sense of what the right mechanism would be for it to police itself, to have the ability to shut down effectively and protect itself from something that it deems is unworthy of further debate on its merits. So, and I do agree, we'll definitely want to bring in both town council and town moderator into that discussion, because they will help to figure out what are the right tools if we should take action at all. Because right now there is no way of doing it.
Yeah, I feel like the town moderator does a pretty good job, but what he does, I mean, he's shut down many of people, kept them in the four corners. So, unless
But
you
what
want
happens
something
when
on
the issue is
unless you
when the
want something
four
on the books.
corners, what happens when the four corners themselves are offensive? And I take a look that we have articles, the third bite at the apple, so to speak, on the article that is for boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. Each time that it's been presented, it's actually gotten, in some ways, more offensive to those who have a connection to Israel. And I'm not saying supporting pro or against the government of Israel. I'm talking about the land and the people of Israel. And there are ways that even the article, not in its writing, but in it, then the presentation, can be actually directly harmful. So that's where, again, if someone were to create an article that said, we don't want anyone who has 5 letters in their last name to be permitted to vote at town meeting. Sorry, Joe. You can't,
No, I get it, but
you can't.
but it's gotta get voted on and approved. And I guess if everyone approves it 75%, then I guess I'm not allowed. I mean, I don't, I mean, I just,
And
I,
that would be the point. Should we have that? Because even right now, someone could actually take certain actions to stifle things in really offensive ways. And the town meeting doesn't have a way of stopping it. So the question is, should the town meeting have the ability to police itself? Our current town moderator, I have nothing against the way that he runs meetings. But there are times when he's not available and he will not be the town moderator forever.
yeah, I get it. You want something on the books just in case the next guy comes along and
Correct.
doesn't
We,
do it. Yeah.
we never thought that we'd be in a situation where we have someone who is convicted of crimes in a position of extreme power, regardless of whether you like or dislike the policies and other components. I'm pretty confident no one ever expected that to be the case, but that is what we do have before us. And we were told that that couldn't happen, and it has. So it's just a matter of, do we want to try and put on the books something to protect ourselves? We've seen, especially lately, that sometimes the laws on the books, especially when they go through the adjudicatory process, are what becomes really important for protecting ourselves from ourselves as well. So just throwing that out there. And I'm not saying that we have to take any particular action. I'm just saying that we'll have the discussion again. So any further comments on that
Yeah.
issue?
Dan, I'll just say that, and we don't have to talk about this now. It sounds like we're going to revisit the conversation, but at that time, I think I would benefit from better understanding why we need something different than the ability to just call a question at any time. I'm just not quite following why that wouldn't be a sufficient solution to this
Great.
issue.
It's a great question. You don't have the ability right now. We do not have the ability to call the question in the middle of a presentation. And that could be a solution that we can call, that calling the question could be done during a presentation. If we were to give the ability to do that, that would be a way of effectively shutting it down, calling the issue to a vote at that time. And whether someone chooses to then vote on it or not, so be it. And right now in the discussion that I had, that is not in order during the presentation. That's been the way that it has been interpreted thus far. So, but I think that that's a fantastic point, and I would encourage that to come back during the next time that this gets discussed. Because again, that may be something that's subject to interpretation by the moderator, if calling the question can be done during a presentation itself. That may be a way that if there is something offensive, that would be a way of stifling it. And that's effectively where I think that the town meeting should have some ability to protect itself. So just throwing that out there. Great comments. Other comments on this?
I was curious if any other legislative body has addressed this, like our state legislature or Congress, and has a way to do this. My quick Google search, which by no means is the answer to this, it doesn't look like Congress at the federal level has any function to prevent a bill or resolution from initial introduction, like even before it's sent to committee. I don't know about the state legislature, though. I'm just curious if anyone has looked at what similar legislative bodies, similar relatively speaking, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but
I think, well, I'm sorry, Dan. I bet Bill would be able to answer that because he is very active in the town moderator, whatever they have, whatever list.
Municipal Moderator Association.
There we
MMA.
go. He is
Yeah.
very active in that, and he's been active for years. So I am guessing he would be able to tell us if other towns or cities have done this kind of bylaw.
Or have another procedure for
Sure.
handling.
Mhm.
The idea is to have some mechanism. To answer the question, Kevin, at the congressional level, actually the speaker or whoever is the acting speaker does have the ability to call for decorum. And in the Massachusetts legislature, I know that at least the Senate, the head of the speaker of the Senate has a similar ability, and they can interrupt a speaker for that purpose if there's something that's that is deemed out of decorum, and that can be challenged by the body or upheld. So there are processes in place for that at other bodies. Again, Robert's Rules does contemplate that to some degree. It actually has things built into it, such as object to the hearing of a question, which is a reserved motion that says basically object to what's in the question itself. That is prohibited by town meeting time. So and unless we otherwise state that that is permissible, that would override the town meeting time directive. So there are other ways of handling it. The main point that was being made by the town moderator tonight is you don't know what's offensive until it's presented, because you don't know exactly what's going to be presented until it's actually delivered. And I agree with that point. And I don't have a problem with that point being made. It's more of, should the captive audience be captive for an entire period of time. Because right now you can do a point of order. If you can't hear, you can do a point of order. If there is a problem with the building, you can't do a point of order because something is offensive. We could add in potentially that you can do a point of order to call the question. And that would be an appropriate question. That's per what Catherine was saying. My interpretation of the way that the wording is currently set up, the point of order does not allow for another motion unless it's deemed privileged. So we would actually have to just call the calling of the question a privileged motion, and that would allow for it to be handled. So there are processes that they have not been exercised, but to what Ann was saying, I think she's exactly right. This issue, and knowing that it'll come up, I will absolutely ask Bill to be prepared for the question in advance so that he can bring as much information as possible. He's very passionate about the town moderator role. If there are three things I know about Bill: he's passionate about his family, he's passionate about town moderator, he's passionate about bicycling. So those are three things. If you don't know Bill, really he enjoys all of those, probably in that order. So it's just different things. I think that, but the comments I think are very appropriate for this, so that we can preserve open town meeting. I'm personally a huge fan of open town meeting, so that everyone can have a voice, and it doesn't have to all go through a representative. So it's a matter of how do we balance that with the lack of civility that has unfortunately grown over the last 5 to 10 years in particular, where we've seen it. We've seen a little bit of it in town meeting. Town moderator does a good job of trying to contain it, but we're trying to make it so that it doesn't devolve more. Because while we're a relatively small town, it's important. Anything else on this topic? Okay, next item, rodenticide. At our last meeting, we talked a little bit about rodenticide on town property. The committee asked me to go to the Board of Health and contact some other entities about that issue and refer it. I did send an email to the other entities asking them to take up the issue, so there's no bylaw before us on rodenticide issues. I was at the Board of Health and they have agreed to take up the issue. They're in discussions currently with the town of Arlington about processes and procedures so that they can potentially implement appropriate regulations from the Board of Health perspective. In addition, that what came out of that discussion were some other really fantastic things. I think it shows some of the really good work that we're doing. Is the Wakefield Housing Authority became aware of the issue and was very appreciative. They're not currently using rodenticide, and now that they're aware of it, they will actually work with the Board of Health and work with others to probably not use a rodenticide if they have to deal with rodents at any of their properties. Fortunately, none of their properties currently require that level of care, which is really good. The other piece that came out during that is that the biggest issues that the town currently has are twofold. One is at construction properties where the ground is disturbed, but the bigger issue is around restaurants. And so there was a discussion about actually putting in regulations around dumpsters that contain foodstuffs to make sure that they're closed and sealed, and really make it so that there's less of an attractive area for the rodents to actually congregate. You'll notice that I'm not keeping this to just rats because it's beyond just rats. It's all sorts of rodents and other miscreants that we don't want that are attracted to suburban areas because it's a hospitable place to live. The less you make it hospitable, the more that they just won't live. the more that it won't get transmitted to other predators and apex predators that cause problems. One thing that came out of that meeting, there's kind of a amazing statistic. A single owl can feed itself on up to around 1,200 rodents a year. They are absolutely fantastic predators. They can also be felled very quickly by rodenticide, by a single rodent that has rodenticide, because the rodents now they reproduce so quickly that they've actually built up immunities to, not complete immunities, but immunities to low levels of rodenticide. So by the time they get enough to kill them, it also has a high enough toxicity for the birds of prey and other animals to also get sick and die. It's a very painful death, and we would not want a child or anyone else to be subject to it, let alone wildlife. So this issue has been taken up by Board of Health. They are also encouraging it to be taken up by Zoning Board of Appeals as part of the conditions for orders of conditions for different properties going forward as well. So you may hear about that, Joe, in your other role for a ZBA, because that's an area where the ZBA does have the ability to do so. Kevin, you may, with the planning board, also similarly for different types of subdivisions and so forth, have the ability to put conditions on. So because rodenticide largely doesn't work in its current form. So as a town-wide initiative, there are a lot of elements here. So many thanks to the committee. This issue is being taken up, and if you watch the Board of Health, I think you'll see more things coming through that. Great way that we can work together with the other town bodies on it. The last main item for this evening is item 7, the May 5th annual town meeting. So Cinco de Mayo, you can come with whatever items. No food is formally allowed in the Galvin Auditorium, but I have a feeling that many of us may have foods that are traditionally eaten on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, for the town meeting. And there are a bunch of town meeting articles that we may find of interest. Thus far, the Bylaw Review Committee has not been asked to give any formal opinions, and unless anyone has a reason to do otherwise, my opinion is that we not take up any issues as a group. But the issues, just to raise your awareness, if you haven't seen the warrant articles as presented, that will come up, are several bylaws. One, again, on marijuana to remove the prohibition that we had just looked at for being amended. Also to enable a zoning bylaw permitting many types of marijuana establishments, more than has been previously suggested. There's also a zoning article for accessory dwelling units, and that's going to come up as well. So those are the main ones that I see being of particular interest for this particular group. There are some other articles that you may find of interest, but I don't think that they are directly bylaw related. There's the article, as I mentioned earlier, the BDS article, boycott, divest, and sanctioning of Israel. It's requesting that things get added to the E-code componentry and get recorded in the appendix of the E-code, but it's not actually being asked for action of the town that's enforceable from everything that I've seen. So it's something that at the last 2 town meetings was voted down on a process basis. So I have a few more comments on that, but I want to, if anyone else has comments on any of the articles, I want to give you the opportunity to speak on these.
Dan, tomorrow night, I believe the planning board is talking about the ADU. Is that correct, Kevin? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a public hearing for it.
Public hearing for I believe the ADU as well as the marijuana bylaw.
I think we have one other one too, if I remember right.
And we are actually going to be talking at the ZBA on Wednesday. We're gonna just discuss the sign bylaw one more time, and then if we have any comments, we'll adjust it and then send it off to Kevin at the planning board to put it to public comment.
The other, there's actually a couple of other public hearings. One is a public way acceptance and then the floodplain, which we already briefly discussed. There isn't really much for bylaw in either of those that I can see. It is an overlay district, but it's kind of mandated by FEMA. So that's the issue. The other comment I do want to make at this town meeting is that the marijuana zoning bylaw and the marijuana prohibition. I have a theoretical or a bias against those two articles on the basis that the town just voted on those very topics last year, and there hasn't been a material change to address any of the issues that were brought up during those discussions and debate. So that's where I look at this and say, if there's been a change, a material change of the conditions of something in the environment that should cause the town to relook at those particular issues, both the removal of the marijuana prohibition and the zoning article, then I would be happy to reconsider what's going on. Otherwise, I view it kind of, well, it's not legally abusive. I view it practically an abuse of the town meeting's time to bring up an issue again that was just voted on without any substantive changes.
Dan,
At least when, go ahead.
no, I had heard, I remember the meeting and people wanted to know what the Board of Health thought in other departments. And my understanding is they have now done their homework on that they have gone to the Board of Health. They've gone to other departments to get their input, which in my mind is something that the body asked them to do. So is it changing the substantive content of the language of the article? It may not be, but I think they're coming to the table with more information, more due diligence.
Given that it's been withdrawn at the planning board, I don't see there being necessarily a favorable reason to have a favorable action on it at town meeting on either article. And I mention it because the two articles are independent. There is no public hearing on the removal of the marijuana prohibition. That just goes straight to town meeting. So that's where I'm looking at this saying there hasn't been a change to that of significance. While they may have had discussions with the other boards, I'm not aware of those discussions taking place from the discussions I've had with others. That there hasn't been a material change that would necessitate it. If the Board of Health were to say, we don't have a problem with this subject to, something, I would take a very different view of the entire situation. That's why I'm not saying
Right.
I'm against it just for the sake of, oh, it's marijuana.
Yeah.
The state has voted to decriminalize marijuana for adults. I don't have a problem with that piece of it. But if we're going to have it as sales within the community and remove something, and make a change from just 1 year ago, I view that there needs to be something that's causing that shift. We saw that in a very positive way last year between the Springtown meeting and the Falltown meeting with the MBTA Communities Overlay District, where it was a substantially different article that came before the Falltown meeting based upon feedback that was received both at the town meeting and through other advocacy by residents and others. And I thought that was a fantastic reason to bring the article back. And it garnered very much significant support by the planning board, by the others who were involved with it. So just to use as an example of where there has been a change in recent times, this one I have not seen where there's that change. And that's why I'm looking at this saying, why bring it back before the town meeting when there hasn't been a substantive change?
Right.
And that's why I'm looking at this saying, why bring it back before the town meeting when there hasn't been a substantive change?
Right.
And that's why I'm looking at this saying, why bring it back before the town meeting when there hasn't been a substantive change? It's a good point. Otherwise, May 5th, please make sure that you're up early. Bring coffee and water as may be needed. You can actually on May 5th is the evening, so bring dinner, might be tacos or something along those lines. But make sure you eat outside you can eat in the cafeteria if you wish, but beforehand. Please get to the meeting if at all possible. If you're unable to be at the meeting for any reason, please drop me a note. For those who have not, just so that we can record it, we do have a requirement to attend town meeting as town officials. And I look forward to seeing everyone. If the town meeting continues, it will probably be from May 5th to May 8th, if it were to follow the historically significant schedule of Mondays and Thursdays. Given the number of articles that I've seen, I am inclined to think we will probably and hopefully be able to get through the entirety of this particular meeting in one night. But I look forward to the discussion with our fellow townspeople. There will be probably some discussion on some articles more so than others. One never knows which articles are going to be of significance. And
is that 7 p.m. start? 6? I forget.
it should be 7 or 7:30, but I believe it's 7 o'clock.
Okay. Put that in the notes. Thank you.
It says 7 on the Town of Wakefield website.
Great. Thanks,
Yep.
Catherine.
7 o'clock. Anything else on town meeting? Our next meeting is currently scheduled for May 19th. Because in 2 weeks, we will have a town election. I do hope that everyone here that is able to vote is able to do so. Please go ahead and watch the town treasurer debate, as that is a contested election of significance. The other contested election is for town constable, and both of those should be interesting race to watch. Town treasurer is particularly interesting, as the candidates each bring very different backgrounds and perspectives to the table. So highly recommend that people do that and participate. The elections themselves will be on the 22nd. So please be sure to vote. Voting itself is open for early voting and so forth now. So our next meeting, instead of being April 21st, Attorney Bobrowski asked that we move it to after the May town meeting. So we're looking at May 19th at 7 p.m. I will confirm with him that he is available, given that town meetings may still be happening. There's a possibility that we may need to see if there's other availability amongst the members. But for right now, if you're able to put that into your calendars. So the first meeting on Monday will be town meeting. Third Monday is May 19th, and we will pick up zoning at that time. If there's additional materials available, I'll make sure to have those posted onto the website and into Dropbox and make those available to everyone. Several upcoming holidays and observances. Passover starts this weekend for those who are celebrating. Next weekend is Holy Week in the Catholic religion with Maundy Thursday. Good Friday, also Orthodox Good Friday. The Orthodox calendar coincides with the Catholic calendar, the Western calendar this year, on April 18th. Holy Saturday is on April 19th. Easter Sunday and Orthodox Easter Sunday is on April 20th. Easter Monday and Orthodox Easter Monday, not as many people are aware of, is just as significant as Easter in many cases, is April 21st. One of the most important days in Massachusetts is April 21st, also April 21st, otherwise known as Boston Marathon Day or Patriots Day. This year will mark 12 years since the tragedy. Please keep the memories of those who lost their lives 12 years ago on Patriots Day in your mind. Yom HaShoah is on the 23rd of April. Yom HaAtzmaut is on May 1st. So Yom HaShoah is the commemoration of the memories of the Holocaust. Yom HaAtzmaut is the celebration of the effectively Israel independence. It's the coming together in the Jewish religion for that. Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, very important, possibly more important than town meeting for some people. Many people who, if you like food of particular cultures. Mother's Day, May 11th. So for those who are mothers, please enjoy it. For those of us who support mothers, please support the mothers as best you possibly can. And Lag BaOmer is a Jewish holiday on May 16th, which is the middle of the Omer period, which is the 7 weeks that happens between Passover and Shavuot, for those who may be curious on that. Anything further that was not pre-announced? Otherwise, for those of you that went to town hall, got to see the note, welcome back home. This is certainly much warmer and, dare I say, a little bit nicer. Thankfully, we did have the ability to do that, and appreciate everyone showing up. So without anything further, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Joe made the motion. Catherine was very quick off of the mute to second that. And were you able to record that Eric was able to join us?
I was, yes. thank
Okay,
you.
excellent. Thank you. So we do have not just a full quorum, but a full body. Much appreciated. And welcome, Eric. Always happy to have you joining us. With that, so motion to adjourn and seconded. Not to be seen again until May 19th. Any discussion? Being none, we will do this in the order in which you appear on my screen. Anne,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Catherine is fast on the mute button. I think it's like an easy button
Oh.
for her.
Yes. Did you not get my yes? Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Eric, if you're able to come off of mute. He's got a thumbs up. And with that, to pull upon Catherine's version of the easy button, which, Catherine, there is an actual easy button here. If needed, I'm going to use the actual yes button for my vote in the affirmative. With that motion, the meeting will be adjourned at 8:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone. And when you get the minutes, either put them in Dropbox, send them to me. We'll go ahead and have them set up. Catherine, thank you again for the minutes of the last meeting. I'm going to make a copy of those, mark those up for a final, and send those on their way. Thank you, everyone. See you hopefully in a couple of weeks at the polls if you're voting in person there. Otherwise, in about it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 weeks for May 5th when we will, or 4 weeks. We'll see everyone at town meeting. And if you're able to get there, again, if you're not able to be at town meeting, just send a note with a rationale so that we are meeting the requirements as designated in our charter and bylaws. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.